The Kingsley Heritage Celebration is an annual event that celebrates the lives and heritage of the enslaved Africans who once lived there. It's held this Saturday on Fort George Island at the Kingsley Plantation. I'm joined now by Steve Kidd. He is the Chief of Science and Resource Management at the National Park Service. Steve, thank you so much for being here.
It's great to be here. Thanks.
We're also taking your calls. If you have questions or comments, you can reach us at 904-549-2937 or email us at firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. Steve, what is the Kingsley Heritage Celebration? What's the foundational idea?
Well, it was started by Emmanuel Kingsley. He was a descendant of Anna and Zephaniah Kingsley, and it was started as a family reunion back in 1998, and it's grown into a celebration for the general public honoring the cultural legacy and spirit of the people who survived enslavement at Kingsley Plantation.
Tell us a little bit about the history of the plantation. It is interesting in terms of the history of Anna Kingsley. She was reportedly a princess, a Senegalese princess. She was kidnapped as a child, enslaved. Tell us about then what happened when she was brought to Northeast Florida.
Well, she was basically abandoned and left to run the plantation on her own. So it's an interesting story of a person who was brought into enslavement and then basically enslaved others. So it is a complicated story, and I think we do a good job of getting into that and letting visitors know about the events that took place out there.
So what does the celebration entail? What can people who come to Kingsley Plantation on Saturday expect to see?
Okay, yeah, it starts at 11 o'clock. It's open to all, and we will have cultural demonstrations going on throughout the day, such as tabby making, where we'll be burning lime and mixing it with oyster shell. That's what a lot of the buildings that are out there were constructed out of. We'll have spinning and indigo dyeing and ranger-led tours throughout the day. But we're really excited at 2:30. We're going to be having some African folklore performing arts by the Oshiri Shiri African Folklore Group, and the Kasaka Dance Company will be doing African dance, costume, and storytelling. And that's at 2:30. And then for the first time ever, we're going to have a nighttime luminary lighting.
Tell us a little bit about the nighttime luminary, and is that a separate ticket that people need?
No, it's open to all. It'll start at 6:15, and we will light candles. Well, they're little LED lights in bags, and then we'll be reading the names of the enslaved peoples who were held on Fort George Island for over 100 years during its history as a plantation.
The plantation itself is really remarkably intact. Talk a little bit about the condition of both the plantation house and the place where enslaved people were, the cabins where they lived.
Yeah, it is. It's the oldest surviving example of an antebellum Spanish colonial plantation in the U.S., and it exemplifies that transition from Spanish Empire rule to U.S. territory governance in the early 1820s. And it's in remarkable condition, and in great condition, too, are the cabins the enslaved people lived in. They're sort of shaped into an arc, and when you enter the plantation on Palmetto Avenue, you see these to your left and right. And we've done a good job of preserving those. We apply a lime wash every year to keep the oyster tabby intact, and, water and rain and things like that threaten to deteriorate it, but we're trying to do what we can to preserve those.
And oyster tabby is kind of similar to coquina, but it's kind of a man-made mixture. Is that right?
That's correct.
Cement and oyster.
With no stone here in Northeast Florida, they took oyster shell, which is abundant, and burned that and made lime from that, and then they would take whole shells or partial shells and mix in with that, and you get a very durable substance. I mean, these cabins have been around since the 1820s, and they're still, they're in partial deterioration, but it's a very durable substance.
How has this celebration changed over the years, particularly in recent years? I know that part of the celebration, as you said, is reading the names of the people who were enslaved there and doing, this honoring ceremony. That wasn't always the case. How has the plantation and the Park Service kind of adapted to our growing knowledge and concern about that history?
Well, it's great. What started out as a family reunion for some of the people who, descendants of the people who were enslaved there, is grown, and we have descendants from both sides. Zephaniah Kingsley had several wives, not just Anna, so some of his descendants from his other family have joined in and come and learned about their relatives.
Well, Steve Kidd of the National Park Service, thanks so much for joining us and previewing Saturday.
Great to be here. Thank you. Hope to see everyone there.